A ver, hola, o sí, ahora. Bueno, buenos días.
Good morning, everybody. How are you doing with this CyberCamp? So welcome to this workshop on how to sniff web traffic. We're going to look at some of the means of doing so. And first and foremost, I'm going to introduce myself to you. I'm Sergio Saiz. I'm the co-founder and director of the Congress on Cybersecurity. And at the end of January, we'll be holding the fourth year here in Santander. I currently work at Netgear, and I'm in charge of security. And here I've put some headlines of companies and the things that I've been doing. I'm now going to hand the floor over to my colleague. Hello, good morning. My name is Alberto Solórzano. I'm known as Alberto, as you can see. So if you've got anything, you want to ask anything, please just ask me. Use my Christian name. I work alongside Sergio, and I'm working with him on Netgear, on systems and networks, and not just on security issues. I'm interested in anonymity in free software. Let's now start our talk. It's a really important talk. How many of you have connected to a hotel wireless? I'm talking about a paying one, but even a free of charge one. Just one person. There. I imagine you've checked your email, you've browsed, and you know what you're exposed to. As long as you're aware of that, another thing is completely the opposite. So let's talk a little bit more about the world of sniffing so that you can see how easy it is for somebody to catch your data, especially in the case of adolescents. Data consumption in mobile. When we see an open network, you see and you connect it. And you know what that involves. We don't know who's behind it. We don't know who's managing it. Even typical networks such as open cafes, as long as you're aware to what you're connecting to, you're risking something. You need to be aware of that. And it may well be that a few months later, in a different city, even in a different country, and there's another cafeteria with an open wireless, and your mobile directly connects to this wireless network. And you didn't realize that you've been connected, so you need to be careful, especially with smartphones, wireless connections, etc. Just with NFC and Bluetooth. So let's carry on. Looking at and see how easy it is to be exposed to a man-in-the-middle attack. And the way traffic is sniffed and to see the traffic that's being sent out or received. Here we're going to explain the most common and most well-known technique, which is violet man in the middle, which is a technique based basically placing oneself right in the middle of the communication between the victim and, in this case, the router. As you can see in the diagram, there we are, right in the middle. Here you can see another kind of diagram where you can see that we're right in the middle of a communication. There are all sorts of hundreds of diagrams like this one. This isn't just the only one. And this is basically it, a man in the middle. I'd like to say that this isn't a normal kind of a talk. It's a workshop. So we're going to do several exercises here so that you can see how you can get right in the middle of a communication, how you can see the traffic, and how, if things don't work as we've been trying them, sometimes things fail and don't work right, don't go right first time. You can imagine sometimes you put a lot of effort into it and then it doesn't work. Sometimes there's a 3G problem or any kind of other connection problem. So let's start doing our exercises. Thank you. If I can close this. This is a user.
Vale. Bueno, a ver si consigo que se vea más o menos bien. Ahí se ve.
Can you see this on the screen? Anyway, the technique that's most frequently used to do the man in the middle is to use RP spoofing. It comes from RP tables. And for those of you that have not heard of RP spoofing, RP means resolution protocol. It's an address protocol resolution. It's as if it was in layer 2. And what this protocol does is it translates IP addresses into smart addresses. So when a customer connects to the network, if to have connectivity with other pieces of equipment, a packet, a RP request packet is sent where they ask, who's so-and-so? This is sent to the broadcast address, and whoever has this IP address replies and says, "Hey, it's me." And then the other colleagues picks it up, writes it down in their RP. So for this technique, if you're an attacker, if you're a hacker, what you do is you send continually, time and time again, RP reply packets, which is a reply to a supposed request which hasn't been carried out, but we reply to it and we say, "Hello, I'm the router, and this is my MAC." So you give them the router address. We'll give them 192.168.11, and our MAC is this one. And this response packet is being sent, for example, to the victim that we want to attack, if it's one or several, or everybody at the same time. So, do you see what I'm getting at? Are you following me? So now, let's do the first demo. And you can see here that we arrive. I'm the attacker, and the first thing that we do, very basically, is to see what the IP address we have. We see what IP address. Here you can see it. There you can see it, 102 it ends in. What's the link port's IP address? We do trace at root. .es and let's see if it replies. Here you can see the link point number. And what's the next thing we do? We try to see what other clients are connected to this network. Just we launch an email. So we do an SP to 192.168 from 11 to 1235. It's checking, it's pinging all the IPs, and any that reply they'll give us the information.
Un poco lento, sí. Vale. Aquí vemos.
And here, you can see who's replied. The link point, that's address 11, that's replied. At the bottom of everything, we've got 102, 103, and 100. This is an iPhone, by the way. Have you got your iPhone?
Sí, si no es el tuyo, alguien se ha colado en el wifi.
Bueno, es igual. Es igual. No pasa nada. Vale, pues aquí ya sería cuestión únicamente.
And this is just a matter of choosing a victim now. I know that he's 100, so just need to choose a victim randomly. If we know it, that's fine, fantastic. So, how do we carry on? Using RP spoof, which is a tool which we use for this. ARP spoof, and we can see how to spend RP reply packets to the victim, because we've got the router IP address. Why are we doing that? So that the victim sends things to us. And we'll also do the reverse. We'll get the victim, we'll get the router, and we'll say to the router that the address is the same as our MAC. We'll do this with ARP spoof, the network interface. The victim, which is in this case 192.168.10. We'll do it the other way around, and the link port 192.168.11. So here we can see how we're sending RP reply packets directly. RP reply is at, and you can see the MAC address, which is always the same one, and we're saying it to 11 and 1100. That's why they are going to write down on their RP table these data. When this IP address is sent, it's translated and then it's sent to our network card. You got it? Simple, yeah? So, now, if the victim tries to browse, just to give you an idea, the only thing that I've got to do is check that I've got the IP 100, and we've got a browser. Firstly, I did it in flat HTTP.
Vale. Aquí, ¿qué es lo que está pasando?
What's happening here?
No puede navegar. Vale.
The person can't browse. Why?
Porque realmente
Because
estamos
actually
haciendo una denegación de servicio.
We're doing service refusal. The victim receives a service refusal because by default, our machine doesn't route traffic. It either goes, joins or leaves, but it doesn't forward traffic.
Proc, Saiz, net.
There you can see IP forward. I don't know if you can see the top one. This file has a 0, so the machine can't forward traffic. What we need to do is to establish it at 1. And then we're going to refresh the page. Now you can see you can see the browser. Now I'm looking at the real page, and I can't tell what's going on here. We can just see we're right in the middle of the communication. Of course, these packets are going via our machines, so we can read them. We can save them as well. What I'm doing here, so that you know, is open here to see the traffic. And here we can see all the different traffic that's going via our network. So here, you can see the RP requests and responses. Here there's not a lot of traffic, so what we're going to do is filter a little bit. We just want to see the packets with an original IP address between 1 and 100. And we only want to see HTTP traffic. The rest isn't of any interest. If I join this web, they're gobbling up all our information, as you can see. It's accessed this IP address. It's done a get to this web, and here you can see below all the HTTP addresses. There's no response because we're filtering it according to who the IP address is. All you need to do is to use that filter, remove it, or apply it inversely. We can put on the origin or the destiny HTTP address. And now we've got the scenario ready. And if if you take the packet with the image, like with WebShark, so let's apply the reverse filter so that the IP address, the origin IP address is 37. Ending in 134.4, and also the ITTP. Here we can see that a picture's been sent as a response. And here we choose this stretch. We go back down to the bottom here. to the JTPG part. So we've got all the information there. And clicking on the right button, export, packet bytes. And we save it, save the JPEG image. You can also do this if he's sending a picture. Let's imagine that what he's doing is accessing the private section of a cloud. And he's either uploading or downloading private images. In this way, we can obtain these images. We can also obtain text, for example, a login. If you want, we can look at it now. This is the filter here, so that it's visual.
Vale. Ahí filtramos de nuevo. Entonces, mira, vemos aquí que ha hecho una petición GET al formulario de login, bueno, a la página de administración. ¿Me está cargando? Vale. Bueno, deciros que para las pruebas esto estamos utilizando un MiFi, ¿vale? Que, bueno, va por 3G, 4G. Entonces esperemos que no falle. Por ahora hay cobertura. O sea que... Vale.
Insertaría mis credenciales normalmente en el login, ¿vale? Vale, evidentemente no he metido las que son.
Da igual, es una prueba, pero bueno.
Pero a él le va a salir ahí.
Aquí ya vemos cómo ha hecho una petición.
Here we can see how a post request has been made. And if we now go to the form section of things, you can see that the fields are log and password. And with that, we have obtained their username and password. Easy peasy. So please be aware when you're using public and open wireless networks. So what's the big mistake, the big human mistake here? Well, quite obviously, it's been to connect with a web HTTP without an encrypted communication with an SSL, TSL. That's the mistake. So, of course, to solve this problem, we had SSL and then subsequent to that TSL. And let's have a look at that now. There's also add-ons. Such as the HTTPS everywhere, which forces all the connections that you work with on internet can only be seen via encrypted traffic that's certified. If you've got any trustworthy web which needs HTTP, you remove the filters and you've got a safer relation. So, other things. I'm now going to cancel the RP spoofing attack, and what this tool will do, it will reverse the attack. As my machine has the MAC addresses of the victim and the router, it sends back a reply with the true data so that the system isn't poisoned, it's not made unstable. And for the next demo, we're going to use another tool called Cup. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a tool that you can use to do man in the middle. And it's good because it's easy to use. It allows you to launch tools such as SS Strip automatically without having to say so explicitly. So it's fairly easy to use. We apologize that the gentleman just closed his microphone without meaning to. What we're going to try to do now is to do the same demo, but in this case with HTTPS traffic. So you'll see that in that case you can't see the data clearly. So we can launch the same attack as before, the RP spoof attack. This is WebShark, and for those of you that are watching, what that green flash says is saying that our traffic between us and the server, the destination server, is encrypted. So here, what we can see is this is encrypted alert. It's loading the login page. And here we can see packets that say application data. So if we try to see some of them, we actually won't be able to see anything here. However,
aquí, pues, por ejemplo, este mismo. Vale, es tráfico cifrado, no vemos nada en claro, ¿vale? Con lo cual, siempre que estemos accediendo a alguna web,
we're accessing a web, or in general, we're broadcasting traffic via an encrypted channel. So without complicating too much the attack scenario, if there are no mistakes with this certificate, then we're safe. So that's on the client side of things. If you're admin or if you depend on this technical side of server setup, if we activate the HTTP and HTTPS for all traffic, we also gain in privacy both for our services and for any clients that you may have. So let's look at the attack again. And now what you'll see is how we can avoid this restriction, the SSL restriction. And we're not going to do anything new, actually. We're not going to break the SSL or the TDS, nor are we going to decipher traffic. But what you will see now is how Normally, when you go to a web, and we don't normally type in http:// and then the web. You just type in the web name and you access it via an HTTPS address.
Vamos a ver cómo ahí está el fallo, ¿vale?
Let's see how the fault and the error appears. What's the status of the fault? And we realize that this connection is being established without encryption with HTTP, when really it should be HTTPS. If we see that we are connecting to Facebook and it's HTTP, if we realize it, something is happening. It's strange. It's odd. It's not going to with HTTPS. These are signals and signs that help us identify that something strange is happening. As I said, let's see the BetterCap tool. With the -t parameter, we say, who's our victim? 100. This parameter wouldn't be necessary, but it's not strictly necessary, but we'll use it. -g, the gateway, the link port 11. We are going to be a proxy. The post requests are going to interest us, and the network interface WLAN 0. Can you see the command? Fine. We are in the middle. This is the strip. LS strip, that's the tool. With this tool, when we ask a request to websites with HTTP, normally what this web does is to redirect us to the HTTPS version. For this, the server gives us an answer, 301302, and that's LS strip. Due to the fact that we are in the middle, it's going to change all the links to HTTPS, and they're going to be replaced by HTTP. So, as attackers, we would be browsing between inverted commas through HTTPS, but we're giving the customer or the client the stripped data. We're going to give him back the HTTP version. BetterCap has started. We are in the middle. We've prepared a domain for this. It's the same, HTTPS encryption. And here we see that this is the strip. It's going. So stripping HTTPS link inside. You can't see Alberto's screen, but here it's stupid. This little green thingy is there. It's the padlock, the green padlock, and all the traffic goes through HTTPS. That's all. So we return the customer the HTTP version. We removed all the HTTPS links, and if he accessed the login page, if he had access to the login page, we would see the data that this customer is typing in the form. We could capture images. We're not going to do that now because we've already seen it, but now the scenario for the victim is exactly the same. It's HTTP connection, and there's nothing else here. So there's the typing of this data. What is the error here? Well, he doesn't realize that he's accessing through HTTP instead of HTTPS. So in this moment, he would type HTTPS / it would be encrypted. We wouldn't be able to see anything, but this is not the case. To improve these connections and avoid these scenarios, we have HDSDS. It comes from HTTP, transport security, and what it says, in fact, is that we, as a client, we connect to a network through HTTP. That web server returns us a redirection to the HTTPS, and it includes a heading saying, from now on and until I don't know how much time, you're going to connect to myself only through HTTPS. The browser keeps that information, and even though you type HTTP / the browser that has this information, and it's going to turn into HTTPS, and the web server will be browsing with HTTPS. That's Google, PayPal, and other webs use that. And any error that may appear with the certificate, well, normally the browser allows you to add an exception. Yes, I want to access this website with this type of heading. You cannot add an exception. You cannot access through HTTP even if you want to. The big sites, internet sites, by default have an agreement, and this is included in all browsers. But we, as not in our part, we can also activate it. The Apache configuration allows that. We include a couple of lines and we force it. Once a person is connected through HTTPS, the connection towards our sites for a specific period of time that we define will be through the secure protocol. Fine. In the next demo, we're going to skip this security measure, and for this purpose, we have two different ways of doing this. If my browser, well, it has a preloaded list of sites with HDCCS. So from the first time you start or you install the browser, that information is loaded, and you cannot access through HTTP anymore. If that domain, specifically the one that we've prepared, is not in that preloaded list, the first time he accesses, you can go through HTTP, but not the next ones. At least the first time you can do with HTTP. It's a very difficult case. It's very rare. You're going to connect the first time with HTTPS and then you get intercepted, but we need to know that the first time might be through HTTPS. Another option is that the customer cleans the cache and the browser data, and you lose the information, and the next time with HTTP he can do it again because he's cleaned the cache. But what happens in the case, and we can see it here, so we have the clean browser cache, so our browser doesn't know that our destination site has HDCCS activated the first time. Here we get to a subdomain. It's called DeLorean. So HDCCS strip is acting here. It's operating because we're in that situation. The browser doesn't have that information for HTTPS, so it's possible to be connected through HTTP and direct an attack. what I'm doing now is to stop the attack. Berto is going to get to the network so that the browser gets the HTTPS. So the attack is not going to work anymore. We'll stop the attack. I'm going to launch. I'm going to clean this IP tables because BetaCap and other tools use this to have a proxy. As attackers, we're not going to launch these attacks. We will launch one or two, but not many of them. So to clean it up, the IP tables, I'm going to clean them, these IP tables. Well, I've accessed once in my server as DeLorean. It's the web provider. I set to the visitor's browser that has to access through the HTTPS always. So I can't launch my attack anymore. So this is the heading attack. The attack now is launched. So it was the HTTP CSS. It's accessing the web, and we don't know about it. Now it's HTTP that is being forced. How can we skip this restriction? Well, the HTTPS heading has max 8. It's the time for this information to expire. I don't know if it's 2 years. By defect, Twitter, I think it was 30 years. How can we skip this restriction? The client, the victim, could be in a later date, on a later date than the one determined by the max 6. How this case can happen? Well, the customer changes the date of his or her computer, and you can change the date and for many years in advance. So it's not spontaneous. We can force it. We'll use a tool called DeLorean that was designed by José Saiz, security researcher. He's here in CyberCamp. He was making research on synchronization of dates in the various operating systems. And he devised this tool which establishes or sets a server NTP date in your PC. So we are in a scenario of man in the middle. The victim computer is asking for the date. What is the current date? As we are in the middle, and this server is intercepted with DeLorean, we are at, this is the date, 3 years, 4 years later. I recommend you to visit tempest.es, and this is interesting, so you can have a look at it. For this, how can we force the fact that the customer asks for the date? Well, it depends, because the Windows systems, and José Saiz reached the conclusion that they synchronize the hour apparently on Sunday during the night. Yes, during the Sunday nights. So it's not just by chance that we have the opportunity to have this scenario, the man-in-the-middle scenario, until the Sunday night. And at this moment, at this precise moment, the victim's computer is on. But there's a case of Ubuntu. It's installed here, Ubuntu. And it updates every time it connects to the network. There's a request to be reconnected against the NTTP. Let's see it. You, as a user, in your Ubuntu screen, you only have the hour. 10:45. If you connect now so that you can see that request and see the date. Yes, I'm going to connect to his computer. Here you see the date. I don't know if you can really see it. No. The current date, Saturday, the 2nd of December, 10:46. So I'm going to disconnect so that there's no problem. How can we force this disconnection from the network? By chance, this is connected in a wireless manner. As you know, wireless communications are like they are, well, as they are. I'm going to use a Wi-Fi external card to push it out of the network and to force him to reconnect. In this way, there will be a date request. We'll give him the date. I'm going to change the date. And the next time he connects, he will connect with HTTP. The key here is that he connects without typing specifically the word HTTPS. In that way, we can skip this restriction because the date has been changed. Here we have the man-in-the-middle scenario. I'm going to launch the DeLorean, and here I'm going to put the monitor mode for the card. With aerodump. Minus E. We'll see here the Wi-Fi networks that are all around. Ours is this one. We stop it. And it's channel 6. So I'm going to stop. It's with VPA. It's with VPA? Yes. Let's start again with the display mode. Channel 6. Let's launch an attack. Authentication attack with AirPlay -0 is the authentication type of attack. Indefinite. The access point VVSSD is this one. And the client or the victim has a MAC address. You've got it somewhere. Here, we take it from here. This is it. We obtain it easily. With aerodump, we can obtain it. When I stopped the RP spoofing attack, I got it. It's not a mysterious thing to do. And the network interface now. WLAN. Through this attack, I'm going to force him to push him out of the network. DeLorean, it's listening here. When you disconnect, tell me, because I'll stop the attack. Sometimes it takes a little while to crash. It's not always immediate. Now it's crashed. Okay, the network is disconnected. I was pushed out of my network and I reconnect my computer. And now we are sending the date it's 2021. We're pushing forward the date. So I'm going to reconnect again. In the Ubuntu screen, we've seen a micro disconnection from the Wi-Fi. Sometimes it happened. And now it's still there. We didn't feel a flashing sign. There's nothing strange happening in our computer. Let's go to the calendar. It's January 2021. We just changed the date. DeLorean attack. In fact, we won't stop it in case it asks for the date again and it picks the right one. But we realized is that if this computer has the date configuration in manual mode, it doesn't work. It has to have the automatic mode for the date. Because if it's manual, it's not going to ask the date to any server. Well, it's very strange to have the manual setting for the date. Now we skip the limit date to Max 6. And if he connects again to the same website, it's going through HTTP now. So we can see the traffic.
Vale. Ahí vemos cómo está accediendo a DeLorean.6.
DeLorean, here you see the attack. We are seeing his traffic.
Podemos saltarnos esa restricción.
So we are skipping this restriction, and it's not secure anymore. With HSTS, it's an effective measure. It's not that easy to skip this, and we've prepared this scenario so that you can see a concept test. But really, it's an effective measure.
Más cosas. Pues bueno, ya que estamos en mitad de la comunicación.
So we are in the middle of the communication with BetterCup. What we can do is to ask for a DNS file, DNS spoofing now. With the same scenario, we are in the middle of the communication, but this time, when he requests to access a website, we can just say that this website is in an IP address that we control. Our server controls this IP, and we're not going to tell him it's not the original IP. It's to spoof a DNS file. Let's stop the attack. Okay, DeLorean is stopped. Can you disconnect so that it gets the right date this time? So.
Vamos a parar. Vamos a parar el modo monitor.
Let's stop the screen. Switch it off, and now the display mode is switched off. We're going to clean the IP tables. In this case, I don't know if you know the set toolkit. Through this tool, it's for social engineer attacks, and it's got a function which is to clone a website. Well, I've been playing with it a little bit. It's quite simple. It's not made for complex environments. In this case, I decided to have exactly the same website in the computer at local level, and when the victim sends us a request to that website, I'm saying it's in my computer, in fact, and he connects to mine instead of to the original website. Let's do the service. Apache starts, and MySQL. Okay, the web server is up. So tests are made with a workplace. We've just changed the title. Secure, or time travel. Let's use BetterCap. We'll say what is the network interface, our victim, the gateway. The attack is the DNS spoofing and the file, root document. DNS file, okay. So to see that this file is contained here, these are the entries that are in there. My IP address is 102. These domains correspond to that IP address. Now, we have BetterCap that's been launched. We didn't activate the sniffing module. We're just going to see how it really and gets to a website that is not the original one. And it's the same cases we've seen before.
Si os fijáis, hasta ahora,
en el título,
in the title, we've changed the title to identify it. Maybe you can see it, the spoofer side. The access log in Apache. As we can see, this is the last access. This is localhost 100. This is now, it's accessing to the website that we put in at local level. When you visit this domain, we said what is the DNS file, and the victim has gone to our website instead of going to the original website. So the scenario here would be exactly the same. If you've accessed the HTTP, well, we could access HTTPS in the same way. The result is the same. In this case, he's accessing a website with HTTPS, and you can say, okay, we can't see the traffic, but we have two options. Either we launch the attack to strip that part of SSL, or as we have control of this web server and we're given a certificate to establish the SSL session, obviously in the browser there should be an error in the certificate because it will be self-signed. In fact, it's not signed by a recognized entity or recognized signature. In that case, we would give WASAC the private key of this certificate, and it could decrypt the SSL part. As long as we have the control of the web server, we can decrypt
and decode the traffic. We can have we can replace the website. We can compile all the data and collect the data of these people with credentials. We could have a database of these credentials, for instance, in Facebook. We can do
En un instituto, en una cafetería.
we could hijack, and there's a Facebook clone, and everybody's leaving the Facebook login. In fact, it goes to the database that is fake, and it's not Facebook. It's a fake Facebook. You can imagine what this would mean. How could we generate a self-signed certificate? And if you look in Google, you'll find thousands of pages saying how you can do that with HBCCL, OpenSSL, the request option. We can ask for the certificate, 509, new key. It's the file.key.
Okay. Vamos a decir que le queremos de tipo RSA.
So RSA, that's the number of bytes. It's not encrypted. .k is not encrypted. We want it now, this in the file that we choose. This certificate in itself file name .crt, and it would be valid for 365 days. We would generate a self-signed certificate .k.crt that we can use in the web server, and this .k key will be given to Waysar to decrypt the traffic.
Vale. Aparte de esto, ¿qué más?
What can we do apart from this? Once we are in the middle of the communication, it's just your imagination.
Vamos a hacer otra.
So let's do another demo. And what we'll do is we're going to place a JavaScript into any website that this victim visits. And to do that, we're going to use BIF. I don't know if you've heard of this tool, BIF. We'll have a look at it now, the BIF tool.
Vale. BIF es una herramienta que sirve para.
BIF is a tool to hijack the web browser. The victim is going to load the JavaScript, they're going to run it, and they're going to return to us the connection with their browser. So we're going to be able to launch a series of attacks against his or her, whereby the social engineering attacks or whatever. So let's just have a look at it. We've activated this BIF service. And what we're going to try and do now is say, for example, it's like the same attack we did before, the spoof. But now, okay, we have the network interface there as before, and our victim in this case, we're gonna tell it not to use the SSL strip, and we'll set up the proxy, and we're gonna say we're going to use a proxy module, which is going to be inject JavaScript. I don't know if you can see, because it's at the bottom of the screen here. And the URL
URL donde está este JavaScript
where this
es
JavaScript's located is
local.
the local URL.
IP
This is the IP address.
llegará 102, ¿vale?
1102
Barra
port 3000 stroke
para que veáis este
hook. So you can see how this works.
para que veáis este JavaScript.
Has puesto un punto solo.
Vale, pues bueno, tiene un montón de funciones JavaScript, ¿vale? Bueno, como veis es un poquillo extenso, ¿vale? Pero bueno, ahora lo vamos a ver mejor. Entonces, lo que vamos a hacer es
What we're going to do,
proxy, man in the middle, y
we'll
vamos a
put
decir
the man in the middle as the proxy, and we're going to tell it to load this JavaScript.
y voy a ir levantando para que veáis aquí.
Here, you can see it now on the screen.
Vale, ese sería el panel de administración de BIF.
Por defecto es.
Okay, beef it's called.
Vale. Bueno, aquí veríamos, tenemos dos directorios,
So,
¿vale?
there are two directories here. We've got the online and the offline. Here you can see where we've been carrying out trial. Now they're online.
Aquí en esta parte veríamos
And here
los que
you can see
están
those
hackeados, ¿vale? Están.
that are currently hooked.
Entonces, si en este momento la víctima
See if at this moment in time the victim accesses a web,
deberíamos ver aquí
we should be able to see how
ese JavaScript,
this JavaScript's injected.
lo vemos aquí.
There you can see it.
Y si ha ido bien,
And if everything's gone okay, here in beef you can see how this browser's now been hijacked.
los datos, como por ejemplo
There are all kinds of data here.
el navegador que es, el lenguaje, la
For example, the browser that it is, the language that it uses, the platform.
si tiene,
You can see whether
qué plugins tiene o bueno,
what plugins it has,
¿qué podemos hacer aquí?
and what can we do?
Lanzar pues varios comandos.
We can launch several commands. For example,
Comandos para detectar
we can launch commands to detect
estos plugins, ¿vale?
see if there's any of these plugins, or maybe to see the person's webcam. Has that person got a webcam? I don't know if you can see the green dot. What that means that this attack is probably going to be successful, and if it's red, it's probably going to fail, or you can't launch the attack. And just to give you an example, I think if we go to exploit here, and you can see, I mean, we can launch all sorts of things. Social engineering. This one here. What this is going to do is it's going to send a window, a pop-up window near the browser asking for your credentials, as if your Facebook session had finished and they're going to ask you to reopen it. So that's the kind of attack that we could do. I don't know if you can see this clearly on the screen. Here. It's to load any sort of local that we want to load. I'm not going to ask any for the moment. So if we launch this attack, here in the victim's browser, a pop-up's opened in which they ask for their username and password for Facebook.
O debería, vamos. ¿Vale? Aquí lo vemos.
There you can see it. There they've typed in username and password. And we can also carry out more attacks. For example, there are some attacks where you see on the web browser a banner which says install Flash again, and what they'll do is it'll put a payload in or anything else. What can we conclude from this? In general, the protection measures that exist, HTTPS, can be considered safe and effective. Where's the biggest mistake? Human factor, of course. We don't realize as humans that actually we're accessing via HTTP. That's my personal opinion. Any web you should access by default HTTPS. And as we've seen, how you can be attacked if you don't type https://. And it's difficult because if there's a certification error, you won't be able to access the web. So in production environments, you don't want your clients, or for whatever meeting, you don't want so many clients to have this service. That's why we're frightened of doing this, but it's an effective measure. I know they're all just little things, but they're little layers that we add. If you remove the wireless connection of your terminal, because you're not using it at that time, don't connect to open wirelesses by default. Don't try to use a safe site whenever you're using your device, especially when you're accessing your blogs, your cloud, your banking account. And returning to this case with which we started the workshop, where suppose you're in a public place, like a hotel, where you can get free wireless. If you're going to use it, we recommend you use a VPN or an SSH connection. And then access internet after having activated your VPN. Because then the network that you're connected to isn't able to decipher traffic. Do you know what a VPN software is? Does anybody in the room not know what VPN software is?
Claro, pues también recomendable 100%, sobre todo si estamos fuera de redes conocidas y no nos queda más que...
We recommend it 100% if you're away from home, if you have to use lots of hotels, you activate your VPN network. If you can get a VPN network, it's another layer of security which we add to, navigate or browse a little more safety. Normally, with these kind of attacks, what they'll usually steal is your username or password or things that can harm, but harm to a certain extent. But imagine that they don't just get your user and your password, but more other data, personal data. In that sense, you've got a more hardcore scenario, because with just relatively few personal data, you can actually prepare an attack, a fairly powerful attack. And also one data takes you to the next one. So you plant one little seed, you pull the thread, and in the end, you can collect up all kinds of data from that person. Oh, we're talking here about a person. Of course, that's how we focused this. But imagine an attack in which they get personal information about you. They can access your personal accounts. They can carry out identity theft. At the very least. So it's easy. Just to get your email, you can find that person in Google. They've probably got a Facebook profile. And 70% share it publicly with all the photos. So you can get the photos, you know what they're called, you know where they live, you've got all their data. So you get a Facebook profile with all their data. And from then onwards, wherever the imagination will take you and whatever you fancy doing. Having reached this point, people aren't going to do things for good. I don't know if you know the case of Sondra Pridge. Sondra Prince was a US lady, and she was a drug consumer. I don't know if he was a drug dealer as well, but she was arrested. And what they did, they took her smartphone, they accessed her personal data, they took her photo, and they set up a Facebook page with these photos to attract other dealers, and in that way try to trap them. In fact, that's what happened. They managed to get hold of quite a few drug traffickers. So what I'm saying with this is that personal data are data, and they're personal, they're very valuable, and a very powerful attack can be committed with just some limited personal data, not just hacking at all, but just public information that's on the internet. And another of the workshops that we've attended over the last few days, somebody told me a recent case of just a few months ago when a national company, because of its purchase volume, orders an amount of material from an international company and decides they're going to pay from a Panama account. They make an order valued in about 400,000 or 500,000 euros. And the only thing that was a little bit suspect was that they said that on this occasion that the amount should be paid into an account in Argentina. And so from a certain amount, over and above a certain amount, the multinational has to pay to an Argentinian account. And the financial manager says that if the multinational has those rules and regulations, okay, well, we'll make the payment there. And then 2 weeks later, the only thing that they know is the account number where they've paid the money. Nobody knows where the material is. The multinational is pending payment to actually send the material. The national company is waiting for the material to be delivered, which they're not going to get because they haven't paid for it. And the customers of the national company are going to the competitors because they haven't received their delivery. And you can imagine all sorts of investigations, complaints, and what's happened. Quite probably, this is somebody that's got an access to their internal network, that has got the information just before the transaction was carried out and knows how the company operates. So this is just due to a human failing. Somebody's accessed that information. So we've got a little bit of time left over. You got any questions? Does anybody want to ask any questions? Sorry, we can't hear the questions from up here because the person's not using the mic. So we'll interpret the answer if we hear the answer.
Sí. Bettercat también tiene el parámetro -d mayúscula, ¿vale? Que es para...
There's another parameter, which is -d. When you launch it, it immediately gives you information about what it's doing. Because when we launched all these attacks, we saw how useful it was to see how to do things properly. Actually, it's quite interesting because the first worked. These kind of demos, you know, you can't do overnight, you need to test it. Are there any other questions? Does anybody else have any other questions?
Vale.
Muchas gracias por haber venido, por haber aguantado esto y esperamos sobre todo concienciaros y que no os olvidéis del candadito verde, ¿vale?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.